There's only 24 hours in a day. I got a pair of earbuds and I wish there was a way that I could know just what I want to listen to. There's 150,000 shows that I'm not sitting through. When the world is dark and boring, let us do your exploring. Pod on pod. Pod on pod.
Welcome to Pod on Pod, a guide to the world of podcasts because it's not your daddy's radio. We're your hosts.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Joel. And this week on Pod, we're going to be discussing the indoor kids. I must have said it 4 or 5 times at the end of last week's episode. I don't know if you noticed it. I said the inside kids. Over and over again. I kept referencing this cool podcast we were going to review next week called The Inside Kids. I was wrong.
Were you an indoor kid growing up?
I was raised on Nintendo. I was an indoor kid. I'm still kind of an indoor kid. Honest to goodness, I said to my wife recently, you know what I want to do? I want to sit on my couch and I want to watch a movie or a TV show. And that's really, at any given point, you can ask, what do I want to do? And if I don't say that, I'm saying I want to listen to a podcast.
I was not an indoor kid. I'm an indoor adult.
Yeah. So you identify with these guys in a whole different direction.
Right.
You might be asking yourself, what the heck is this show and what have I gotten myself into? Every week on Pod, we review a different podcast for you, and you say, wow, that's pretty meta. It is pretty meta, but it's also pretty helpful, I think, because there's thousands of shows out there that are great, and there are maybe as many shows out there or more that are really not that good. And
we call those shows bad.
Yeah, we call those shows bad. We also don't talk very much about those shows. We like to review shows here that have some worth for our audience, we think, even if they don't necessarily connect directly with us. This week, we're going to be talking about The Indoor Kids. It's a show hosted by Kumail Nanjiani and Emily V. Gordon. They're married.
Yeah, and that's an almost accurate pronunciation of Kumail's last name.
Kumail Nanjiani?
No,
Nanjiani?
That's closer.
Kumail Nanjiani?
Yeah.
I do know how to spell it. I worked on it very, very hard, but I do know how to spell it. And I've been fussed at more than a couple of times by our listeners and reviewers on the iTunes. And if you like this show, we'd love for you to review us on iTunes or on Stitcher, if that's where you get your podcast. But either way, people have said you should know at least how to pronounce these people's names. It's difficult sometimes. Kumail Nanjiani, however,
that's really close.
It's very phonetically obvious, I think, when you look at the way that it's spelled. This is a podcast mostly about video games, but also about comedy.
Yes. You know, the first video game podcast that we reviewed, the Martha and Eric show, I think appealed to a much younger crowd. And I feel like this is, I don't want to say grown-up version of it, but it is an older version of it.
Absolutely. Also a more famous version of it, I guess. These guys are backed up by the Nerdist Industries.
And they're professional comedians.
Yeah, you can find the show at thenerdist.com, by the way. I listen to, as we always do here, we listen to at least 3 episodes of a show. Now, this is a show you listen to every week, pretty much.
Not every week. It's a show that I'm pretty sure it's my wife's favorite show. So I get to hear a good bit of it, whether I'm the one listening or not.
I listened to the Tenacious D episode. I listened to Terrifying with Kumail and Emily. And then I listened to You're the Best with Stephen Falk. Those were the 3 episodes that I listened to. The way that we discuss the show here on Pod is talking about 4 criteria. We talk about host likability, audio quality, production values, and then the content itself. However, I generally save the content to the last, but I had a couple of people point out, hey, why don't you mention the content first? Because if the show isn't about something I want to listen to, I don't really care how it sounds.
True.
We also give sort of a synopsis of how the show works up front anyway. So we're moving. We're going to flip the script and move content up to the front of the show.
Hey, Joel, before we get into it
Sure.
too far, I'm going to sound probably pretty funny tonight for this episode because I've just had some dental work done, and I bit the dickens out of my tongue while my mouth was numb and didn't realize it.
So if you sound a little bit thick-tongued.
Or raspy.
Or what if you're more crotchety than normal? That's just the drugs wearing off?
No, I just don't feel well.
All right, then.
But we're going to get through this.
Fair warned is fair armed, my friend. Let's talk about the content. This show is about video gaming, but I want to say that Kumail and Emily do a really good job of allowing non-gamers in. I'm not what you would call your standard gamer. I do some gaming. I have, apps on my phone and on my iPads that I like to play on a regular basis. I even have a couple of games on my computer. I don't ever play them there because when I'm sitting at my computer, I'm always doing work now. But I even have a Wii U at the house, and once in a while, like once a month or so, I'll get to play a little Disney Infinity or Lego Marvel Superheroes because that's what my kids have, and therefore that's what I have. But like I don't wait in line for the new Call of Duty. I don't play Madden. I don't even know most of these games that they're talking about.
Man, in college, I don't know where I found the time to game so much.
I didn't, because we didn't have anything to do. You go to class for like 4 hours a day and then you're done.
Yeah, in our household, Rachel's definitely the gamer, and that's kind of a new development over the last 6 months.
And maybe that's why she loves this show so much. But it's not. Like I said, even though I didn't know the games that they were talking about, most of them, every now and again, there's like the Shadow of Mordor. They advertise that on everything that's on television. So I knew that that's a game out there. It's about the Lord of the Rings, sort of vaguely, and it happens in between some of the movies or whatnot. And I know that exists. And I know it's on systems that I don't own, but I didn't know anything more. They talk about it. Now, some of the games I didn't know at all. Like, for instance, in Terrifying with Kamel and Emily, they talk about PT.
Yeah.
Do you know what this game is?
Not a clue.
Okay, I didn't either. It's apparently a demo for the new Silent Hill that's not out yet.
Oh yeah, no, because I think I listened to that episode too. Yes.
Okay, so but I didn't know anything about that.
It's not a full game. It's like a download.
It's just the demo for the thing. But it's like a demo / teaser for
they loved it.
This Silent Hill movie, which you don't know until you finish it. No, right. Not only did they love it, but they called it. Kamel said it might be the most terrifying media he's ever taken in. Any, not just the scariest video game, but the scariest media that he's ever taken in. That's a pretty authoritative statement. But anyway, even in that, in an episode where they talked about a video game that I had no context for, I still enjoyed their conversation. And again, they were welcoming for an outsider.
They have really good chemistry.
They do. Well, they're married, so you would hope that they have good chemistry.
Like this, the newest episode, they actually have the guy who wrote Borderlands 2. And is, wrote like 90% of the new one coming out, the prequel. And it was cool listening to him talk about just game mechanics with them and all these other things that, as a casual gamer, I would have never thought of.
Let's move from content over to production values. First of all, their theme music is chiptunes.
I want to say Reggie Watts is who do. I think he has done those chiptune theme songs for all of the Nerdists.
I like chiptunes. This is not one of my favorites. Even amongst the Nerdist shows, I don't like this theme song as much as some of the others. It's not bad though. But other than the theme song, they got effectively no production. They play a little music, they come start the show, and then they play music out. And then you have the Nerdist sounder now entering Nerdist Industries, now exiting Nerdist Industries.
Like a good show should.
Like a good show should. So it's high on Josh's production value scale. Let's move straight into host likability. These two cats, Emily and Kamel, what do you think?
Well, I started listening to the show because I like Kamel. I've seen he is on a lot of he's on Doug Loves Movies a lot. He's on
Harmontown.
He's
often.
on Harmontown a lot. He's in Silicon Valley. He's in a lot of stuff. So that's why I originally listened to the show. But I got to tell you, man, Emily's probably my favorite host. She does a really good job of moving the show forward, which I appreciate. So she's probably my favorite. So yeah.
I could cut to the point and just say pretty much that I agree with you. I love Kamel. He's my favorite thing in Harmontown. And again, as we've discussed previously, I only listen to the Dungeons and Dragons parts of Harmontown, but he's amazing when he plays D&D. He's really, really funny. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to love this show. I like Kamel a lot. I can't handle him in large doses. If I listen to just him or mostly him or half him for an hour and change, as I do on these podcasts, it's too much. It's too much Kamel.
He's the sidekick.
He should be the sidekick, and he talks too much for the side. I want a more silent sidekick. He needs to be more, Kato, less Robin. Is all I'm saying.
I think he's fantastic.
But just as you said, though, I literally have here in my notes under host likability, Emily is one of my favorite personalities I've ever heard on a podcast.
Yeah, I agree.
She is funny. She's sweet. She's geeky. She's a little saucy, just the appropriate amount of saucy from time to time. Like, I think she's amazing. I want 3 or 4 more shows from her. Like, why doesn't she podcast about everything?
This is an explicit show.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mostly because of her.
Yeah, but she's got, as I said, she's a little saucy, maybe more than a little saucy. But I kind of like my ladies that way. So that's host likability. Let's move on over to audio quality. This is the place where it falls apart for me. It's got a huge variance, man. Like the full episodes, if it's the two of them and a guest and they're actually in their studio recording, there's nothing wrong with it. It sounds like all the Nerdist
a lot
shows.
of the opens they record at their house.
Not just the opens though. They have, like, for instance, the Terrifying with Camille and Emily.
Yeah.
It's just the two of them.
Yeah,
it's in their
house.
apartment.
Yep.
Camille, like, gets up and walks to the refrigerator several times and go in the middle of a conversation. Like, he's literally making a point and he walks away from the microphone and then he walks back.
Yeah, but that makes me feel more like I'm just hanging out with them at their house.
Makes me feel like I can't hear the podcast.
Well, okay, fair enough. It doesn't bother me.
That variance doesn't. You're willing to forgive. It bothers you. You're willing to forgive.
True. And another thing that the show does that normally I am into, that I dig, are the intros. I love cold opens. I love most monologues that certain podcasts do. This one I feel like just is clunky and just drags along.
I do feel like they don't pull the parachute early enough. Like, that's the answer. Like, it's fine to let it kind of dangle there for a second, but then you pull the ripcord and you get the hell out.
Right. I agree.
They don't do that quickly enough. All right. So after we talk about the show content, production values, host likability, and audio quality, we then like to discuss our favorite moments in the show. This one really easy for me. The two of them describe the whole episode, really, even though the audio quality was the worst of the episodes that I listened to. Terrifying with Camille and Emily, the whole segment where they talk about that Silent Hill demo. I mean, Camille is describing how he was weeping like a child. They're talking about like oh, it was dark and we made our friend play it and he was alone in his house and he literally called us like, why would you do this to me? You know, like, it must be really, really terrifying. And it says to me that I made the exact right choice in not buying a new gen system on which I can play this frankly terrifying game.
My favorite part of the show has been like, so Rachel's new to gaming, right?
Yes.
And when we play games together, especially if it's like a first-person shooter, her game playing style is to just run ahead and just get in the middle of everything, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, man, why are you rushing so far ahead? You know, step back. We've got sniper rifles, whatever, right? But it doesn't matter. She's always, whatever game it is, she's headlong, just in the middle of it, right?
Once more into the breach.
Yes. And that's how Camille and Emily described her game playing. So I was like, I wonder if that's because I don't play games with a lot of girls.
Right.
I'm like, I wonder if that's just how girls play video games, man.
You're saying all women play like Leroy Jenkins?
Well, no, because
Leroy Jenkins.
You've played games with You've played board games with Rachel.
I have.
She's what we like to call, we're gonna say, methodical to be nice. Right? She's very, very deliberate and careful in how she makes her moves in like dominoes or cards or whatever.
Sure.
But man, you put a controller in her hand, there is no thought. She's just crush and kill and that's it.
She's just all id.
Yeah. So whenever Emily says
Mommy
something,
like, mommy take.
right. So whenever Emily says something that reminds me of Rachel, like, I think it's really cool.
My other favorite moment in the Stephen Falk episode. Stephen Falk mentions, oh yeah, I've played games since way back in the arcade days. I had a slug on a string, and Emily stops him and says, "You had a what?" And he says,
"Oh, he didn't realize that you
slug on a string."
Yeah.
You know, like
you
I
put
took
the
the
quarter
quarter
in and pop it back out,
and I had a hole drilled through it, and you put a string on it, and that way you can drop it in the machine, and once it registers, then you yank it back out, and then you can play again and again and again. And
yeah,
like this entire concept was foreign to Emily because she comes from a time after arcade games. Like, it's just not as part of her understanding of video games.
Well,
I thought that was nice.
You could do that with vending machines too.
Absolutely. Really?
Yeah.
we need some slugs on it. Do they have a dollar bill on a string?
And here's the deal: is it didn't even used to have to be a quarter.
It just had to be the right weight.
No, a slug is pipe ends of pipes.
Right.
If you had one that was the right size and you just cut the end of that pipe off,
that would be a slug. Trigger the system.
Yeah, new tire on the street, and it's just the metal going past
Look
that
at
triggered
that.
the system.
All right, then. After we talk about our favorite moments, we give the show alternate names. Of course, this one is a really apt title. The Indoor Kids is just right for what they are and
Yes.
what they are talking about, et cetera, et cetera.
Trying to hear Kamel try to talk about football in any way. Like you're like, this is an indoor kid.
He talked about he was about to start getting into FIFA 15. He thought this was going to be the year that he starts. And she's like, we don't want to play sports games. And he says, it's soccer. It's not really a sport. I was like, you're going to get emails for that one, Kamel. I would call the show Pixel Power.
I don't like that.
You don't like that one?
No.
All right. How about the swing and a miss from the kid? You got an alternate title?
Our 2 bits.
Our 2 bits. I like that. How about his and hers gaming?
Yeah, it's pretty on the nose.
It's like, I think that's exactly right. I love that they bring the 2 different perspectives to the show. After we talk about the show, break it down through our 4 categories and tell you some of our favorite moments, we then like to rate the show. And here at Pod on Pod, we don't rate it with stars or thumbs up or any of that nonsense. We use earbuds in. How thoroughly are you listening to the show? Josh, I like this show a lot better than I thought I was going to like it.
Good.
I liked it better than other shows that we've listened to about subjects that I don't really have an interest in. I like this show quite a lot. I'm going to give it 1.5 earbuds.
All right, right on. Good stuff. There is absolutely no way I'm not giving this show 2 earbuds. Number one, I like this show, but come on, man. You and I have been podcasting for 3 years now, almost 4.
Yeah. 3.5.
My wife has never listened really to any of the stuff that we've done or even downloaded a podcast app, right?
She's listened when you play her something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This show is the show that got her. She listens in her car now. She listens at the house, hooks it up to the Bluetooth speaker.
The fact that you've got a podcast that could get your wife to know what a Bluetooth speaker is pretty impressive.
Yeah, but it's something. It's a podcast.
How do I make that audio go on the big thing?
Well, it's exactly. It's a podcast we can actually talk about.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well,
So,
for that, I understand.
2 stars.
I understand your two earbud. All right, so
Yeah, 2 earbuds.
That's this week's review of The Indoor Kids with Kamel Nanjiani.
2 stars would be a pretty poor rating.
That's right. That would be a terrible rating. That'd be somebody else's show.
Yeah.
That's our review of The Indoor Kids with Kamel Nanjiani and Emily V. Gordon.
Good job.
I'm working on it, man. My pronunciation's getting better every day. That's not a song. All right. Next week here on Pod, you're going to hear our review of the Weekly Planet podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You love foreign podcasts.
I'm really reaching for an Australian accent, and I can't do one. Before we do this show, I'm going to have an impression of one of those 2 guys.
It's a bad idea, and I support it.
I'm probably not going to do that. The Weekly Planet podcast is the official podcast of comicbookmovies.com. And here's a little spoiler warning. It might be my new favorite show. We're going to talk about that next week.
I knew you were going to say that.
Of course you did. All right, but this week, you should go to podonpod.com and find our other reviews. Rate us in iTunes or on Stitcher. Share us with your friends. podonpod.com.
And we have officially picked out the schedule for October.
We'll tell you more about that next week. Until next week.
November.
Yeah, we have officially picked out the schedule for November.
Exactly.
Yes, that's what you meant. That's
Yes.
what you said.
Exactly.
Through the magic of editing. Until next week.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Joel, and we're the Inside Kids.
Adults.
Are you wanting something funny? Are you wanting something smart? A show on astral projection or the history of art? Do you want to learn a language or how to play guitar? Just leave it up to Joel and Josh. Pod on pod. Pod on pod.
Pod on Pod is a proud member of the Procast Network, a ProCreate production. ProCreate is a community of artists in film, music, the digital arts, and fine arts that helps connect and collaborate on projects. You can find out more at www.teamprocreate.com. For more great podcasts from the Procast Network, try Movie Buzzed. Join your host, Zach, every episode on the Movie Buzzed podcast for good friends, a good movie, and a great buzz. The Pod on Pod theme song is written and performed by Adam Dale. Find his music in iTunes and more information about him on our website. Our musical guest this week is Ekavox.